All right, so we're going to record a little bit of a lecture on note-taking strategies, and I'm going to go ahead and get in, and we'll talk it through. Um, so one of the things I like to talk a lot about is making sure that first of all you start with the end, that you define the prompt in your own words. A lot of times we just skip by this. We think it's a report. We think it's an essay. We have a sense what the professor said in class, but we don't go back over the prompt and carefully circle and define generally two things: what exactly the particular essay is. I mean, try to define it. Is it a report? Is it a exploration of an idea? Is it a comparative and contrast of um, that's being asked for? So that's the first thing I do, and then I think about sources that I especially liked, that maybe were read for that unit that professors require me to use, and I might just glide back through those. I tend to do this early in my process just because I feel like it lets me then think about it while I'm walking or while I'm between class. It lets me incubate ideas. So I think that's a pretty powerful move. Again, putting even just a phrase or two in your own words, literally writing it out, could be really helpful in defining the project, making sure, again, if it's an exploratory essay, if it's a definition essay, if it's a comparison contrast. Generally, those are the main ones that are done. Argument is kind of implied in all, meaning you still have to have a thesis with a controlling opinion attached to a subject or topic. The second is kind of a joke here. Have a note-taking strategy, right? So many of us just go in. We can do what's called the compile approach. Jenny Nelson, who's a scholar in my field, talked about how 75% of the students she surveyed would do this. We simply take our notes, we highlight key terms. We may or may not do a rough outline, but we just start typing and we kind of gloss through it. And we hope enough of it's in our head that we can kind of go from source to source that we've got, if you will, piled on the bed next to us or on the floor, and we'll kind of grab from it. And that can work from a standpoint of, I've got to get it done. But oftentimes we'll miss because we don't have enough organization. So possible strategies I might recommend, we talked about note cards being in that article. The article is meant to be more of a conversation starter. It's not an authoritative piece. It's in the equivalent of Reddit. It's by an author who writes quite often, but it's enough to hopefully stimulate a conversation. One of the things about note cards is they're tactile, meaning I get my hands on them. They're tangible. I write them out. There it is. It's a piece of block of 3x5. It's a block of 4x6. I can resequence them. I can constantly be, if you will, working the deck. It's like cards. And sometimes the analogy is really good that way. It's just like we'd play a game of poker or rummy, whatever your card game is. You're constantly resorting your cards to kind of get them to sequence so you can see them better as to how to play your hand. And in the same way with note cards, you can play your hand. So it's a process of working out the ideas, and as the author of Note Card Taking Strategy said, Ryan Holiday, they work as building blocks. The negatives are they're potentially hard to keep and organize. Who wants them, if you will? They can take more time. Some of us aren't people that want to write everything out. It can feel a little bit frustrating, especially for a particular essay you're not that interested in writing in the first place. You might feel like it's just an extra step. I know some of us have nightmare moments from high school where this was a required strategy by a professor or teacher, I should say, in that case. And so it felt very wooden and very contrived. All right, Google Docs is where a lot of us land. We just do the cut and paste, and that's great because we can drop the quotes in, we can color code, we can sort, we can sift, we can create bullet lists. We can use headers to kind of say, okay, that's a subcategory. Say, for example, for this essay, if you're doing electric cars, you're talking about battery life, so you can get all your facts of battery life, new battery technologies, might even be another subcategory. So you'll shove all your facts from different sources into those subcategories underneath those headers. So the cut and paste alone is fantastic, and we all live in a digital world. Why not use it, right? Why not just grab from the articles, the lines, cut and paste them, drop them in, and then maybe a comment or two attached to them so we can remember what we were thinking about the quote when we come back to it. I like this tactic. It's my primary, meaning I will use this and I'll show you that I use it in combination often. So again, let's read here what it says. So use of color coding or bold or headers makes it much easier and quick to define subcategories or subpoints of your topic, underneath which you gathered quotes from different sources. And last but not least, it's searchable. So I can go back into that big Google Doc and search. So when I was going through my doctorate, one of the things I had to do is constantly think, is this source going to be relevant in my big picture of my dissertation? Sometimes it's hard to make that call. And even in short papers, we can think, I'm not sure, is this going to work or not? So that can be kind of a drag. I'm going to take a quick pause here. Hold on a second, folks. I'm going to see if I can come back out, see if anybody else is here. I don't believe they are. Okay. I'm going to continue this lecture then. Searchable is just such a powerful tool. So I have a document that literally is, if I print it out, about 200 pages long and with full of short note takes on different sources. And what it allows me to do is I look for one key term, I can bounce through the whole document and gather that way. So it allows me to gather across sources very effectively, especially if I keep it in one doc. All right, the negatives, it can literally be the pile, right? How do you sort and sift? Still need to print it. I can't see it. It's not on a cork board. It doesn't let me put it on the wall. I can't get the big picture. I can't sort and sift, if you will, puzzle piece, or play the deck of cards, if you will, resort my cards. It's a little bit more moving in digital space, which is again screen bound. We have the screen and that's what we've got. So there are ways around this. Like I've literally designed my Google Doc entries to have a certain format similar to the note-taking strategy, source-taking strategy I gave you guys, which is to kind of look at the genre, the project, the author, who's the author, the methods, and then brief quotes, 5, 6. I limit myself, honestly, to just a few quotes, even for long docs, because I think to myself, if I need to dive in, I'm just going to grab the whole source anyway. So I really, really believe that sometimes we can overkick it with that too. I just got an alert here. Let me try to see if I can get back out, because it's doing this thing again where I don't know if I can get out of the document, or out of the screen real easily. Sorry, have a hang in here. I guess I'll just continue with the lecture at this point. Sorry, folks, if somebody's trying to get in a little late, we're already at 8, 10 minutes after 10. So I'm just walking the lecture here through, and I think we'll just go with what we got. So again, the negatives can be, it's not sortable into bite-sized units. The whole point of cards isn't that they're cards, it's that it puts it in chunks and then allows those chunks to kind of be used. You can tape them on the wall, you can put them on a cork board, you can lay them on the floor, you can sequence them like cards stacking on top of each other. It's that modular ability to work with them, plus the idea that it's limiting this chunk of thought. And it's really interesting when you limit to a chunk of thought, it tends to be more economical as to what you put on there. You get a little bit more precise as to what you write on the card. And you also think of it as a nice movable unit. It really does tuck in beautifully most times in a paragraph. It fits into that kind of, that amount of text, if you will, or thought on a card often inserts into just the right amount of paragraph structure. So, there's equivalencies there, meaning that it kind of has that translation. So I'm going to go ahead and come back out of the doc, see if I can keep going here. So combination, guys, I like to use docs where, I've got the digital copy for the cut and paste because, God, let's face it, we want quickness. So I want to cut and paste from my articles, and then so I have that huge compilation of data. I do use searchable terms then. I go back through for key terms if I'm looking for them, and then I organize or I pull out chunks off those key terms into my cards. I actually write out what each source says about that particular term. So oftentimes my cards become mini compilations of 2 or 3 sources. So for example, again, electric cars, new battery technology, I'd have a card just for new battery technology with 4 sources on it. So each card would not necessarily be per source. Cards can be used in different ways, of course, but I like them. I still like to use, when I really formally write, going back to some kind of chunking. Even if I get lazy, I just do Google Doc and then I just chunk it into like my own little version and I print them out. And so I've got like half sheets of paper. I sometimes even cut the sheets of paper so I can kind of arrange them a little bit around me. It's nice to have digital copy, right? We want it, but we also want that flexibility again of being modular, being able to lay out the sheets of paper next to me to be able to see things properly. Now, I should say across all 3 of these, meaning the note card separate, Google Doc separate, or the combination, outlining is always a great idea if that works for your kind of person. And some of us can be really frustrated by outlining. So you've got to be careful. And some of us also know that once we start writing, it's going to change anyway, so to speak. So I just look at it as a loose way to get things going. I do it pretty fast because I know that a lot of us are on a timeline, but I do start with that defining strategy at the top and your prompt your own words. Almost do that immediately after getting the assignment. I think about it for a few days, and then I start, I gather my sources, and then I strip out key quotes and drop them into kind of an ugly looking doc, if you will, meaning it's just got a compilation, just enough that I know which quote comes from where. And then I start arranging my quotes, and then I translate out of either at that point, by translate out, I mean either a printout in chunks, so the equivalent of small half-page chunks of thought, um, or I will actually transfer to note cards and start, if you will, almost making an outline through my cards. Okay, hopefully that was somewhat understandable. The negatives, again, of all these strategies can be, wow, it's just taking time. I don't really want to do this. I can just wing it. Let me have the sources. I highlight my main points. I work off my highlights. And that, yeah, one level, of course, you know. But when you're getting the bigger pieces, like if you try to get to grad school and to pull that off, it's going to be awfully hard. So, once you push past an 8 pager, it's a little harder to kind of make sure you've got enough material and you're covering your sources equitably. So these three notes I want to put on the bottom are really important. So if you think they're throwaways, they're not. I'm getting them in quickly. Evernote is a great app. It's been around for years, has great support to it, technical support. It allows you to scan in, meaning take a pic, and then it translates some of the text out so you can actually be usable text off something. It was often used in the early days just to scan cards. This was the transfer in the days when people were giving out business cards at conventions. You could easily take a photo and it would transfer, put it into a file, and allows you to, again, subcategorize. So in this case, if you're on trips, you can quickly put into a folder for all the business cards, if you will, contacts. So it's a neat organizing tool. It also allows for not only pics, but of course, quick note taking. It allows for searchable across all that. So it will search text across even what you took a photo of. And so it's got some nice capabilities that way. The downside is it does have a subscription, and it may be overkill. The phone we all have, we got notes on our iPhones or otherwise, and that's probably our quick go-to. I should say also with Evernote, it does record as well, so you can do you know, verbal recordings, just kind of popping off ideas. So that could be good. Phone, and it keeps it all in one central area. I sometimes will whip out the phone for quick notes. Sometimes I'll email them to myself. I had a lot of former students do the technique of emailing themselves some ideas, and that's a good idea. Or just simply keeping it in the phone, right? Who cares? And you'll get it and grab it when you need to. I want to look a little bit at Scrivener if I can get to it. It's a really cool tool, and I'm going to see, again, I'm jamming up here a little bit. Say jamming up. Sometimes what happens is I can't quite get this thing to like work properly to get me out. So as you can see, I'm going to be going into another category only because I can't stop my share. So I'm going to try to stop the share because my cursor is not showing up on my computer. There we go. Okay, good. So here we go. Cool. We're out. Let me go ahead and kill that part of the recording, if you will, guys. Thank you.